I'm Riley.
And I'm Roni,
And this is the Plan to Eat podcast,
where we have conversations about meal planning, food, and wellness to help you answer the question, what's for dinner? Hello, and welcome back to the Plan to Eat podcast. Today we have a very special interview with Carol Ann Cates. She is the award-winning author of Grocery Shopping Secrets that we have been breaking down and that we still have a couple more episodes to break down. So just a quick bio of who Carol Ann is. She is an award-winning author, former grocer, and an expert in all things food and shopping. She grew up in her family's corner market here in northern Colorado, which is where Plan to Eat is based. And she learned from her father that great meals start with great ingredients. She went on to co-own and operate the supermarkets that her dad started for multiple decades and gained deep insight into American cooking and grocery shopping habits. She's the author of not only Grocery Shopping Secrets, but Cooking Seasonally in Colorado and Secret Recipes from the Corner Market. She also talks in this episode that she's been working on a memoir for several years. And she's just an expert in saving money, buying better food, and making the most out of your grocery shopping trip.
this interview with Carol Ann is just, so sweet. I just enjoyed speaking with her, hearing about her childhood, her funny jobs, and funny things that happened. And it's just so neat to get to interact with a woman who lives nearby and is just chock full of so much information. There's a little funny segment in the show where we talk and she says that she wanted to bag her groceries, but the girl at the store says she's been trained to do it. And I just have to laugh because this woman is an expert.
Yeah.
All things grocery store. And so it was lovely to get to speak to her and hear more of her knowledge. And just to plug this book again, it is such a guide to the grocery store. It has everything you could possibly want to know about the groceries you're buying, how to store them, how to choose them. So go and buy her book and just absorb all of her knowledge.
Mm-hmm. We hope you enjoy this interview with Carol Ann Cates. Hi, Carol Ann. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
It's my pleasure.
Why don't you just give us the quick snippet of who you are and what you do?
Well, I was born in Fort Collins. My father had a grocery store in Fort Collins. The first one was at 113 East Oak. He opened another one on the corner of Mountain and House, which is across from where the Catholic Church is. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in the grocery business. I graduated from high school and went to college. I started at CSU. I ended up transferring to the University of Washington. I got my degree in anthropology, which was very fascinating, but totally useless on the job market. Mm-hmm. When I got done with college, I worked for an oil company and started as a land secretary and advanced to a landman. My father died in 1979 and my mother died in 1984. And then I inherited co-ownership of Steele's Market. My husband and I lived in Denver at the time. He was selling real estate and owned jewelry stores. In fact, if you remember the Jewelry Emporium in Fort Collins, he founded that. And Susan Harrison bought it from him when we opened the Harmony store. But when we inherited the grocery stores, we moved back to Fort Collins. We closed in 2001. At that time, we had 6 grocery stores, 9 pharmacies, and we owned and operated our own bakery production facility, which was picked as the in-store bakery of the year by Retail Bakers of America in 1991. It was a pretty darn good bakery. We had, at the time we closed, we had 3 stores in Fort Collins, 1 in Windsor, 1 in Niwot, and 1 in Fort Morgan. We opened a big new store on the corner of Drake and Shields in 1999. December of 1999. In February of 2000, the city closed the road in front of it, and our customers had trouble getting to it. We did about 100, we were doing $390,000 a week. After the road closed, we were doing 190.
Whoa.
Oh.
It was a significant hit to our business. The road was closed for 6 months. The day the road opened, our supplier tried to take us over, which was really a fun experience. They sent a guy in we had never met before named Jeff Shabaki, and he said, "Give us $1 million or give us your keys today." We spent from 10 in the morning till midnight negotiating with them. Every time they'd make an offer, they would call their CEO and he would rescind it and make the offer worse. By midnight that night, we hadn't made an offer. So they went home, they went back to Minneapolis. We slept on it and decided to fight them in federal court. We hired a firm in Denver. We fought them in federal court and won because they had RICO violations, but it cost us $1 million. And it was just difficult to recover from that. We filed for Chapter 11 in February of 2001. We had our plan approved in August. And then Super Walmart opened on the corner of LeMay and Mulberry. And it takes 3 months for a grocery store to get their sales back. So our creditors forced us into Chapter 11. It was pretty painful.
Oh, sounds like it.
3 years of stress. I know you had a question, what was my favorite job as an adult? And that was creating recipes for our ad. So if we had pork chops in the ad, I did a pork chop recipe. And as time got on and I got a little better at doing recipes, then I would try to include 3 or 4 items that were in the ad in that recipe. So when we closed, I had hundreds of recipes. I started writing my memoir at that time, Busted But Not Broken, and I drove my husband crazy. He said, "You have all these wonderful recipes. Why don't you do a recipe book?" So I wrote Secret Recipes from the Corner Market. It won 3 national awards and was picked in the top and favorite by the Denver Post. I sold that in craft fairs and farmers market. I believe I'm the only award-winning cookbook author that is a former grocer. So to set myself apart in that cookbook, I did include some grocery insider wisdom on how to select and store perishables. After I wrote my cookbook, I did manufacture food and sell it in farmers markets and craft fairs. I did that for several years. Our daughter fell and got a closed head injury. And so our granddaughter came to live with us. And I found it really difficult to manufacture food, do farmers markets, craft fairs, and raise my granddaughter. So I retired in about 2013. I have found I love writing. I had a food column for the Colorado for a while. And I did do the Boulder County Farmers Market. So I had a food column for them. And so I really started loving going to the farmer's market and buying what is seasonal and combining the seasonal ingredients into recipes. So I do have enough recipes for another cookbook. I want to get my memoir out, and I had written a historical fiction novel, which I want to get out. And I was a little leery of social media. So I started doing social media before COVID. And the young man that helped me was named Bobby Crew. Bobby writes horror and he likes snakes. So we have a thing in common. But during the process, I started doing recipes with shopping information in my blog. And then COVID came and food prices started rising. So Bobby asked me to write a blog on how to save money at the grocery store. So through Bobby's encouragement, I put together Grocery Shopping Secrets. Some of that information is in my cookbook, but I actually did spend about 1.5 years expanding it. So it is much more detailed than my cookbook. It's won 10 national awards, which I'm really proud of. And I did my Amazon bestseller campaign, and it was #1 in the US, Australia, and France in my categories. So I was pretty excited about that.
We've been so impressed with how thorough it is. There is nothing you have left out. I don't think there's anything you've left out of this book. It has been such a joy to read, and I've learned so much about how to select the right produce. And every chapter that we go through, I learned something totally new that I never had heard before about selecting produce or the right dairy product. And so I'm really impressed with the book.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I did spend a lot of time on it.
I can tell. I can tell. It's incredibly thorough.
And one of the things I was really pleased to add was how to freeze things. So like when they say the price of eggs are coming down, but I don't see it at King Soopers unless you buy their brand.
Mm-hmm.
But especially when eggs were so high, I was really happy to have that tip in the book, because like if you make a creme brulee and you only use the yolks, then you're throwing away 8 whites. So it's really nice to know you can freeze them. I was only able to listen to your first podcast, but you did mention the Engine 2 diet.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter did learn of another diet, which is called the Whole30 diet.
Mm-hmm.
And a woman, have you heard of that?
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't include that in the book because I hadn't looked across it. That's the one thing that if I do a revision, I will add.
If that's the only thing you left out, I think you're doing incredibly well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we've been talking about it for the last couple episodes, and Riley and I both just keeps telling everybody, you need to buy a copy of this book. We've learned so much. I feel so much more empowered at the grocery store. Even just the simple things of, how to pick a watermelon, how to pick a cantaloupe. I feel like we talked in the last episode a little bit about how I feel like there's like a lore around, like, oh, you knock on it to see if it's hollow, or you do the things, but you never know which one is the right one. So it's really nice to have just a single source of truth of somebody who really has experience with it, to be like, now I can go to the grocery store and I know that the thing I'm doing is not crazy and it's actually the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think particularly since COVID, the quality of the produce we get is not as good as it used to be. And it's really frustrating to me. I know my husband loves cauliflower, so I was at the grocery store trying to buy some cauliflower, and they all had brown spots on them, which means they're starting to decay.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to the produce clerk, do you have any other cauliflower that doesn't have brown spots? And she said, no, this just came in. It's just off the truck.
Wow.
So I think it's harder to get good produce. And, I go in sometimes and there'll be peppers that are just very wrinkly, and you just don't want that. So I think it's good to know those things.
I think if that's the case, that produce is lower quality across the board, it's even more important to know what you're looking for, because you can't just trust what's there. You have to have your own knowledge in your back pocket and say, I can't just hope for the best that this is the right thing. I need to know for sure that these brown spots indicate this, or wrinkly peppers mean this, or whatever the case is for whatever grocery item you're buying. It's even more important to know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So with your knowledge of grocery store and how all of the supply chain and everything works, what do you think is the cause of not getting as good of produce in the last few years? Is it just supply chain issues?
It was during COVID. I don't think it's that case anymore. I did ask one of the produce managers in King Soopers why he thought that was the case, and he told me because there's more people to feed. I don't think that's necessarily true, that food should be worse because there's more people. My son-in-law is a King Soopers store manager, which has been really fun since I've been in the family. he doesn't notice that it's lower quality, but
Mm.
I certainly do.
Mm.
I did notice one time when I was in buying avocados, because you shouldn't refrigerate avocados until they're ripe because that slows the ripening process. They were whole. And so
Mm.
the manager told me that they ship them in the refrigerated truck.
Mm.
So when we bought our produce, the avocados didn't come in a refrigerated truck. So I think some of it may be deterioration in shipping procedures.
Fascinating.
I'm trying to save money.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you're okay with going back in time a little bit, I would love to hear about just like your favorite memory of growing up in a grocery store. I know there's got to be some unique things about growing up around and in a grocery store that other people did not experience. So if you'd love to talk, I'd just like to hear you talk about that and maybe in that your
Um,
favorite and least favorite jobs that you had.
well, my very favorite memory was riding cardboard boxes down the conveyor belt. The very first store we had was very small, and all the back stock was kept in the basement. And there was a long conveyor belt that went from the back door to the top of the basement, and then a conveyor belt that went down the basement. And I grew up in I had a very humdrum childhood that was a little boring. So my father worked every Sunday, and on Sundays, my brother and I would tag along to the grocery store with him. And our big treat was to get a raw hot dog out of the meat department and eat that. And then we would go find empty cardboard boxes, and we would put the box at the very top of the conveyor belt, and he'd get in and I'd push him down. And it was very dangerous. You would have to lean into the wall or the box would just fly off. How, how that was my favorite fun memory. The very first job I had, I wasn't tall enough to reach the counter, nor was my brother. My brother was 2 years younger than I was. And at that time, my dad sold potatoes in brown bags. So he would fill them up with potatoes and staple the top shut. My brother wasn't old enough to print, so I would print red potatoes, 10 pounds, 29 cents. He's standing on the milk crate. He would stand on his milk crate and put the potatoes in. Then I would put them on the scale and weigh them. And then we'd staple it shut. And I was just so proud of my handwriting. My dad put the sacks out to be sold, that there was my handwriting. I do have a story about my dad, a couple of stories I'd like to tell you about my dad. When I was a little girl, he said, "I want to show you my secret place." So we had a bunch of boxes stacked. His office was upstairs, sort of on a mezzanine level, so he could look out and see everything that was going on in the store. And he had this place where he had boxes, and he moved them away, and they were mostly what he called then cash paid outs or invoices. So he moved them away, and we crawled into the attic. And the attic was 2x4s, and he had stretched long boards across the attic. So we walked across the boards, and he had laid plywood down over the check stands. And he said, "Lay down here and look through this hole." So I looked through the hole, and there were the check stands. So he told me, because having money missing in the grocery business, there's always theft, and it can damage you, can knock out all your profits for the year. So when money was missing, he would pretend he was going home for dinner, and he would go into the alley, and when no one was looking, he would climb the telephone pole and go into the attic through the heating unit, and he would lie there and see who was stealing money. Now, as I got older, I came home from high school early one day, And if I hadn't have come home early, I wouldn't have known this story. But my dad was sitting at the table eating his lunch, and my mom went to the mailbox, which was on the front porch. And she came back and she said, "Dad, there's a letter for you from an attorney." And she put it down on the table. And my dad didn't like attorneys because they were always costing him money. So he let it sit there for a long time. And finally, he opened it. And he said, "Why now? Why after all these years?" I said, "What happened, Dad? What's wrong?" And my mom, who had read the letter over his shoulder, said, "Well, she's old enough to know." So finally he said that when in the 30s, he worked for O.P. Skaggs in Denver on First and Broadway. And he was the store manager, which meant that he worked 6 days a week from 5 in the morning till 11 at night. And on Sundays, he had to go up in the mountains and work on O.P. Skaggs' ranch. The Skaggs started Skaggstra. I don't know if you remember that. And also Safeway.
Mhm.
But if you ran a grocery store and made money, O.P. Skaggs would give you 50% interest. You had to make money for 5 years. Well, one morning, my dad told me he went into the store at 5 a.m. to put the cash in the bank, and he opened the cash register and all the money was gone. And there was no sign of a forced entry. He called the police. Since they couldn't find a sign of a forced entry, O.P. Skaggs fired him. And he ended up in Eaton, Colorado, working in a little grocery store for a man named Lolly. So the letter that he got was from the attorney of the man who had died, and he wanted my dad to know that he was the one who had he'd gone in through a skylight. His wife had cancer, and he needed the money to save her. And when he died, he wanted my dad to know. So that would have been in the 60s. So for 30 years, my dad lived with being falsely accused. And I think that's why he went into the attic and waited, because he wanted to be sure he wasn't falsely accusing anyone.
Mm.
So with this, I did a story for my blog about that story about my dad, which after the stores closed, it was so painful. We had to personally guarantee all the loans for the businesses. So we lost everything we had. We got sued. People said nasty things. So holding on to that story was really important to me. It gave me courage to go through a whole lot of, yeah.
Mhm.
Wow, that is, I mean, I feel like I have tears in my eyes just thinking about that. And just like what he went through, what you went through. Um, is that part of your memoir? Is that stuff that you've written in your memoir?
I will have all those flashbacks in my memoir, but my memoir will be about what it was like to go through an attempted corporate takeover.
Mm.
I have really loved writing as I've gotten older, and I finished my historical fiction novel, but sent it to a content editor who doesn't edit for punctuation or spelling, but for character development and plot development. And so I have some of my comments back. Some were good, some were bad, which isn't that the way life is, but I'm in the process of editing that to go back to the editor again. So I want to get that book done before I finish my memoir. I have about 60,000 words done on my memoir. I've been in the process of trying to rearrange it so all my little flashbacks, like the story about my dad, will come in at the right time.
Mm.
I can't wait to read it.
I know,
Well,
me too.
Yeah.
So circling back to the grocery store a little bit, I would assume that it's pretty hard for you to be satisfied with a grocery store, having lived and worked in one for so long. But is there a chain or grocery store now that you trust? I know you've mentioned King Soopers a couple of times, but is that where you have found like that you like that grocery store chain?
Yes, that's where I shop. When my dad opened a store on Foothills in College, Safeway went across the street. They didn't last there.
Mhm.
And Safeway resented that quite a bit. And when they came to Windsor, we had a store in Windsor and then they opened, and our goal was, or Safeway's goal was to push us out. So I haven't had really positive feelings about Safeway. I am in a program called National Authors in Grocery Stores, and Kroger is a part of that. So it is a nationwide program where authors can go into grocery stores and sell their books.
Hmm.
So I haven't done it since December because my husband's been pretty ill and I haven't wanted to leave him. But I I like to support King Soopers because of that program. But
Mm.
also I just think they're a little bit better. The grocery store, the Safeway in Windsor, which is where we would shop, isn't real busy, so they don't turn their produce over.
Mhm.
So their produce tends to not be as good.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a big factor. Yeah, it's how busy the store is. Yeah.
That was an interesting thing that I learned from your book is that, I think we tend to think like, I don't want to go to the busy grocery store. It's kind of a hassle, all the people, but realizing that there actually is a benefit to going to the busier grocery store means that things aren't sitting on the shelves forever and you're getting stuff that's not very good or maybe closer to its expiration date.
Yeah, they turn their product over faster. Busy
Mhm.
grocery stores.
I'm curious, on a personal level, if you have like a one ingredient that you always keep in your kitchen, like that you use in all of your recipes, that you just something that you really love.
I have a really extensive dried herb section. I always have olive oil. I always have butter. My favorite foods are either French or Italian. My mother once told me, "You don't eat to live, you live to eat." So I've always enjoyed food. That's a pretty hard one for me. There's only one thing I don't like, and that is fruits.
Yeah, everybody has something that they don't like. You said you mentioned French and Italian cooking. Have you traveled? Have you done cooking classes? Is that something you enjoy to do? Do you enjoy cooking? I mean, obviously you've written a lot of recipe books, and you've written recipes. It sounded like you wrote them just to be a helper. Here's the sale ad. I'm going to include a recipe. I'm going to help my customers in this way. Do you actually enjoy the process of cooking also? And have you taken many cooking classes?
I have taken some cooking classes. We went to Italy, and there was a lovely woman there named Andrea who took us to the farmer's market. And we shopped at the farmer's market for our dinner, and we cooked the whole entire day. And then we had dinner. She taught us how to make limoncello, which I have never made, but I did buy a bottle of green alcohol to do it. I just haven't done it. I have taken a couple of classes with my daughter at Ginger Baker. I took a cooking class in Chicago. I learned to cook from my mother and my aunt and my grandma. Uh, I think the one who influenced me the most was my Aunt Beryl. She would stand at the stove and she just nurtured her food. She didn't whip it or beat it. She just nurtured it. And I really like nurturing food as my Aunt Beryl did.
Hmm.
When I first had my cookbook, I used to sign, let's see, cooking, and it is in my grocery shopping secrets book. It's in the very beginning. Cooking is an art that requires fresh ingredients, careful shopping, and a nurturing spirit. It also requires love of food, and love of those you invite to your table. And I really cook to please people. We have friends over, and uh, one of them likes Jim likes Italian, so I would make lasagna or something like that.
Cooking from the heart is the best way to cook, I think. You don't even
Yeah.
need a recipe sometimes when you cook from the heart. You just put it all in there and it comes out great.
Yes. Yes. And I've noticed when I am having a bad day or I'm not in a good mood, things don't turn out the same as when you're in a good place.
Mm, yeah,
Have you found that?
absolutely. Yeah. When you cook with love, they say like love is a secret ingredient in cooking. Like I think it really is. Do you have any advice that you would give somebody who wants to cook more, just based off of your own experience and having written recipes?
Thing is like playing the violin. You have to do it and do it to get good at it. My first dinner party I gave before I got married, and I did a Chinese theme. Let's see, I made egg rolls from scratch, chop suey, chicken fried rice, and I had one other thing which flips me now. I started cooking at 10 in the morning, and everyone came at about 6:30, and I didn't finish until 11. And so, of course, we were young, so people were drinking and playing cards. They loved the dinner, but I think it was probably because they were so hungry. So I think just keep at it.
I think that's really good advice. I think that cooking is one of those things that it's hard for people to think of it as a practice, right?
Mhm.
Because we just think, well, we eat 3 times a day. I should be good at cooking. And yeah, it really does take a lot of practice and that just feel for what is good and what you like and what your family likes, because everybody's different in that way too.
I think if you can read, you can cook. If you can read and follow directions, you can cook.
Mm-hmm.
But it
It's
doesn't come easily. When my husband and I were first married, his grandfather passed away and he went to Chicago for the funeral. And so I wanted to have a special treat for him, and he loved brownies. So I made brownies to have for when he came back. And he took a bite out of it and got this really weird look on his face. And I said, well, is it any good? And he goes, well, it's the only thing I've ever eaten that tastes too awful to spit out. And I think I forgot the sugar. So, everybody is going to have those times. I've started Ina Garten's memoir. I haven't finished it yet, but I don't think she was perfect in the beginning either.
no one was. No one when they started cooking, none of us were perfect. I
No,
can think of things that I cooked in college just to eat, to live, right? And I remember my roommates would make so much fun of me because it was just bizarre and it was inexpensive. And I was trying to eat as healthy as I could on the lowest budget possible. And they would just think that what I ate was so weird. And I think that now, if they knew what I do for a living, just like I cook all the time and I love to cook and I work for a meal planning website and all these things, they would think, wow, she's come a long way. So everyone has stories like that.
yeah. I had a roommate in college that would make chicken and it would always be raw, and I didn't want to eat it. You would just kind of have to take off the top layer and leave the
No.
other. It was, yeah.
Yeah. I think my chicken was cooked, but it was maybe not the most appetizing. What is while we're on this topic, what's your favorite thing to cook and do you cook regularly at home now?
Yes. My favorite thing to cook when we have Christmas Eve, I love making cioppino. I make cioppino every Christmas Eve. For Christmas, I make prime rib. My Uncle Eddie was a butcher in the first store, and in my cookbook, there's a recipe for how he cooked prime rib, and you cook it for an hour, turn the oven off, and then don't open the oven door, and in the last 45 minutes, you cook it. I really love, if it's something I want to eat, I love to cook.
I can relate.
We've had my grandson every morning. Both his parents work and he's playing baseball. So he needs rides to practice, to games, to batting cages. So we've had him, and he'll come at 6 in the morning, which is a bit early for me, but he's 15. And so he's always hungry. And I would want to do something simple like bagels or oatmeal or eggs. And finally I said, well, when you're at your grandma's, you should have your favorite breakfast. What's your favorite breakfast? And he said, pancakes. I said, oh, blueberry buttermilk. And he goes, no, banana. So I did a recipe for banana pecan buttermilk pancakes. That was one of my recent blogs. So I cook for people. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he sounds like a lucky grandson that he gets to go to grandma's house and have banana pecan pancakes.
I think grandparents are to spoil their grandkids. He and my husband went to, is it Murdoch's that was new in Fort Collins? And he came to this site. What happens at grandma's stays at grandma's. So I don't know what kind of grandmas you have, but I'm not a good
No, it sounds like you're the best one.
Yeah.
That is so kind. And again, just demonstrates your heart. I mean, I said this earlier, just that you did that to be a help to your customers, but ultimately it just comes down to the fact that it sounds like you really love the people around you and you want to serve them. And so, yeah, just cooking him his favorite breakfast, it goes to the heart of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he did love the pancakes. I did have my grandson from Ireland was here, Calder. My son and his wife live in Ireland, and Calder struggles to be, he's very picky about what he eats. He says he's a vegetarian, but I think the only vegetable he was eating for a while was potatoes.
Oh.
So my son bought him a book. I don't know if you've seen it. There's Every Night is Pizza Night. Have you heard of that book?
I have
No.
not.
It's about a young boy who would only eat pizza. And so he started traveling around his neighborhood and visiting his neighbors. And he had one neighbor that ate green pozole. And so when Calder came to visit, he wanted me to make green pozole. And since he's a vegetarian, I had to use jackfruit.
Mm.
And
Fascinating.
the jackfruit made it rather bitter. So I did make Calder his green pozole, but he was not fond of it. So I made it in with chicken, and it was really much better with chicken.
Oh,
That
that's
sounds like an
funny.
awesome book. I don't know many kids who wouldn't love to have pizza night every night.
Yes.
Yes. Well, are you okay if we circle back around to the grocery store?
Sure.
I'm just curious if you can think of any common mistakes that shoppers make that maybe end up costing them more money, or the reason why they end up wasting more food after they go to the grocery store.
I watch people shop, and some people just grab, even tomatoes, they just grab one off the top without really looking at it. So I think people make mistakes by not ensuring that what they're taking home is really good quality. If you get home with something that's bad quality, it's going to deteriorate more quickly. I think not checking date when you buy milk. You know, it used to drive me crazy when we had the stores because I could go into the milk case, and if there was a backdated milk, it just popped right up to me. But if you're buying things like dairy, you need to ensure that it's got plenty of days on it. Another thing that bothers me is some butchers will tell you that when beef starts getting brown spots on it, that it's not deteriorating, but beef with brown spots on it is going bad more quickly. When we had our delis, everything was made in-house, so everything was fresh. We would give it 3 days in the case, and then it would have to go out. So if you're buying chef-prepared items in the deli, which is probably not very often, I think most everything comes in already made. But those you really need to eat those either the day you buy them or the next day, because if they stay 3 days in the case, they could be at the end of their life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you read that in my book. I have it in my I don't think I did put this in my book. Perhaps I did. One thing we worried about every day was that our refrigeration goes out, and if you don't catch it, you can lose the whole case.
Mm.
Mhm.
So every day, I don't know if you listen in King Super, sometimes they'll have announcements, check the temperatures.
Mm.
But if you buy anything from a cold case that isn't cold,
Mhm.
chances are they're having refrigeration issues, so you should pass on that item.
Mm.
The marinated meats is another thing in the grocery business when things would be at their prime, getting ready to go past their prime. In the meat case, we would either marinate them or put a rub on them, raise the price. We call that value added.
Mhm.
And if you're going to buy the bag, I'm not saying don't buy it because they're still good, but you should eat it that day.
That's really
Helpful.
good to
That's
know.
really
Mhm.
helpful. Yeah. On the refrigeration topic, this is a bit of an anecdote, but I remember as a kid, I can't remember if it was the ice cream shop or if it was the grocery store in my hometown, but somehow we found out that the refrigeration had gone out. And so people they just said, come and get free ice cream. We've got to get rid of it because it's melting. And I think it must have been an ice cream shop. And we went and just got free ice cream because all their freezers had gone down and they needed to give it away because they couldn't do anything else about it because it
You
was all
know,
just going to get thrown away otherwise. But I imagine that's a very important job for somebody at the grocery store. So I hope wherever you are, refrigeration, temperature checkers, thank you for what you do.
yeah, yeah, really important.
Did you work in the grocery store like all through high school and like as a job, or did you have other jobs?
In high school, my first job was doing the payroll. I would have to go in and they would have their number of hours. And I think that's an awful big job to give to a teenager, but they had their hours and I'd have their hourly rate. My father paid in cash. He had little white envelopes. You'd write their name on it. You'd figure out how much they had. If it came to like, just say that they were due $59.50, we gave them $60, which my father was later fined for. But because he didn't pay to the penny.
Mm.
But that was my first job. I worked in the office. I remember my dad's books were off 1 cent and nobody could find it. But I found the 1 penny and he said to my mom, Mr. Hickman couldn't find it and Marilyn couldn't find it, but Carol Ann found it. So I worked in the office and did the book. I checked. I will tell you about my first day checking was July 3rd. And back then we were closed on the 4th. And the people would line up from the cash register all the way to the back of the store. We had 5 checkouts. It was very busy. And I started at 9 o'clock in the morning. And at 9 o'clock at night, my dad said, Carol Ann, come help me do the deposit. And I said, I have to go to the bathroom and get a drink of water. I haven't been to the bathroom all day. And he said, why didn't you call for a relief check? And I said, you never told me I could.
That's impressive.
Being a boss's daughter was not easy. He thought you knew things that maybe you didn't know, but that was a 12-hour day. That was a long day.
Mm-hmm. You're
I was
almost at an anniversary. For everyone listening, we're recording this on July 1st, so you're almost at a big anniversary.
And now they would call that child labor. But back then, we didn't, we had buttons we had to push. So it was like 19 cents, 29 cents. So it was all with your fingers. I don't know if you guys remember those kind of check stands.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that that's some muscle memory. If for everyone listening, because this is a podcast, she's in the air. She's typing the numbers. I can see that that's some muscle memory even these years later.
Yeah.
But again, I sat before I checked, and my father he gave me very strict instructions that you only use a bag that's big enough for the product.
Mm.
So we had a bag that would have fit a loaf of bread perfectly. But the customer was an older woman, and she got very angry at me, said, you're mushing my bread, you're mushing my bread. So she wanted it in the very biggest bag. And that was something I learned about pleasing customers.
I imagine that was a big learning experience.
Yeah, I bet there were a lot of those times where the thing that the customer wanted was not the thing that you had been told to do by your father.
Yes.
And it being your father and your boss, that's a hefty one sometimes. Do you now, like when you go and check out at the grocery store, do you sack your groceries very particularly?
I like to sack my own groceries. I don't like someone else sack them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like to have all the refrigerated stuff together. I like my bread and my tomatoes on top. I don't think that my dad used to have competitions for the sackers to see who could sack the most square bag of groceries that it wouldn't tip over. And he would, pick the winner. But it is harder to do that in the fabric bags. The fabric
Mhm.
bags, I think, are harder to sack. I had one little sacker that got really irritated because she said, I've been trained. I know what I'm doing. I will sack. But so I said, okay, fine.
If I had been sitting there with you, I would have said, "Do you know who this is? She is an expert."
She's been sacking groceries since when your mom was a baby, you know?
Well, I was sacking groceries before you were born,
Yeah.
before your mother was born.
Did we miss anything, Carol Ann? Is there any other stuff that you wanted to share on the podcast today, either about the grocery store, about your books?
No, I don't think so.
Cool.
I think it's a great little book, and I really wrote it to help people during inflation because, boy, things went up. I think it was 2022. Grocery prices, inflation peaked at 13%.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it'll ever come down. Do you guys notice it coming down?
Don't think so, but I'm also trying to do my due diligence of coupons and buying just what we need and things along those lines. And I would just say that your book has been like your book resonates so deeply with the values at our company and what we hope that people get out of meal planning, which is saving money, saving time, buying the right thing, saving money at the grocery store. And so I just want to say that we love your book, and I think it's actually really helped me bring my grocery costs down because I'm just choosing the right produce and it's not going bad, and just like knowing what to freeze. And so it's been an asset.
Yeah.
No, I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah. I think particularly the information about freezing. Riley and I have talked on the podcast. We've been doing this podcast for 3 years now, and we've talked multiple times about utilizing the freezer and just having it be a really good tool in your kitchen. And still, we learned so much about what we could freeze from your book. I didn't know you could freeze cucumbers. I think we had already told our podcast listeners a few years ago, like, don't ever freeze a cucumber. Why would you do that?
Yeah, but then you gave us the advice of actually how to do it properly.
Yes.
So you helped us correct that.
Yeah.
We always end our podcasts by asking our guests if they'd cooked something recently that they loved. And I know we've kind of talked about this a little bit already, but have you cooked anything recently that's worth noting other than those amazing pancakes?
Recently, I made a really delicious carrot cake.
Mm.
I have been trying to duplicate the bakery recipes, which we made them in, batches of dozens and hundreds. So it was really hard to break them down, but I did get the carrot cake done, I love carrot cake. It's my favorite cake. I love making grilled artichoke hearts. I made those recently. If you've never made them, they're delicious. There's a restaurant in Denver called Hillstone that serves grilled artichoke hearts. So you cut them in half, scoop out the heart, and of course you cook them first. You can either steam them or boil them with lemon and garlic and a little bit of olive oil, and then we grill them. We brush them with olive oil and garlic and make a nice aioli for it. So we love to do that. I love
Yeah.
making cherry chipotle salmon.
Mm.
And anytime I have anyone over for my family, I make Pauline's potato salad, which was my mother's potato salad. And it's like having on there right with us. And so that's one of my favorite things to make when my family comes.
That's so
I think
special.
I need to buy your cookbooks.
I think so
These
too.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like artichokes are very intimidating to me, but you just made that sound really simple. So I think I need to give it a try.
Well, the artichoke is on my blog, so you can find it on my website. Most of the recipes on my blog are new.
Well, this has been really lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking your time to chat with us. We've just been really enjoying reading your book, and it is really exciting to get to connect with you.
Well, now you know my story. The
Yeah.
good, the bad, and the ugly. Just our produce.
And you're local. I hope one day we run into you in person.
I know.
I am going to be doing a King Sippers again. Probably I won't start until the summer's over. My husband has had some injuries and I just don't want to leave him alone, but it'll be either on my Instagram. You might find me at a King Sippers. I think I'll try to do that new one on College and Drake.
Yeah.
Try to do that one so you can see where I'm going to be at King Sippers on my Instagram.
Okay,
Cool.
awesome. That sounds great.
We go there all the time because it's a really nice new grocery store.
It is, and they have everything you need.
They do.
Like we did go on the Whole30 diet, and when we went on that Whole30 diet, we were able to find more things we needed.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Wonderful to meet you, ladies.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Plant Eat Podcast. If you like this episode and others, please share these with your friends, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.